Today we're going to talk about W.E.B. Du Bois. The official title is W. Du Bois and the Epiphany of Double Consciousness. So we're gonna hone in on some key ideas of his. I want to say this is going to be an appetizer for Du Bois. How many of you have read The Souls of Black Folk? A few of you. Some of you may read him. At this point, depending on where you are in our program, you may read him. In the new version of our program, he's part of an elective, and some of you may be reading him already or are reading him this semester or next semester. He was a recent addition to our curriculum, and this is gonna be an appetizer. I think my initial plan for talking about him was more ambitious than the one I'm gonna give you, but I realize that I tend to go deep and need a little extra time to talk about a few things. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna read some portions of his biography. W.E.B. Du Bois lived to be 95 years old. 95 years old. And that's an amazing feat within itself, but because of when he was born and when he died, the kinds of things he was able to see is amazing, right? So he's born in 1868. Okay, so think about what the country is. This is in the middle of the Reconstruction period. The Civil War is still cooling off, right? And he dies in 1963. Think about that. Born in 1868 and dies in 1963. So I put these dates on here. I'm just going to be literally reading some highlights of his biography just for you to get a sense. This is, those of you who have the book, this is listed in your book, but he's so, and then after I do that, I'm gonna dig into one of his writings, The Souls of Black Folk, the one that is most well known, and we're gonna dig into some of the concepts in what I'm highlighting in the title over there. So just a few things here with respect to his biography. So first, 1868, he was born. 1888, he receives a BA degree from Fisk University. Fisk is an HBCU. Do we all know what an HBCU is? It's an historically black college and university. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because those universities were established during the Reconstruction period, which Du Bois talks about in this book. Okay? And he talks about the Reconstruction period because what he really is getting into, what is the aftermath of the end of slavery? What is that? To some extent, we're still living in that aftermath, to some extent, right? But he's talking about it in 1901, okay? So he graduates from Fisk University with the BA, okay? In 1890, he earns a BA cum laude in philosophy at Harvard, and he gives the commencement address. In 1891, he receives an MA degree in history from Harvard. In 1894, he's denied a PhD degree at Friedrich Wilhelm University because of residency requirements. But in 1895, he receives a PhD in history from Harvard and is the first black student to do so. In 1896, he publishes his doctoral thesis. So his dissertation, here was the title, The Suppression of the African Slave Trade to the United States of America, 1638 to 1870. And it was the first volume in the Harvard Historical Monograph series. I highlight that because it talks about many things, but he's doing kind of a historical review of slavery during that period of time. And what's interesting, he talks about one of the things that's discussed in that dissertation is the discussion of slavery in the Constitutional Convention. And there was a serious debate as to whether slavery would continue at the founding of the country, and the kind of the debates between the North and the South and various things that continue to linger. And when you see that, you see that this matter of slavery is this irritant that continues in some ways to haunt the country. It was there at the founding, and the decision of the founders, the conclusion they drew was that we would continue slavery up until 1808, at which time we would abolish it. But they wouldn't really abolish slavery, they would abolish the slave trade. And so, you know, with the founding fathers, they are sons of the Enlightenment. They believed in a reasoned, gradual approach to change. So they postponed the end of slavery, right? So anyway, that's part of the discussion there. 1897, he accepts a faculty position in economics and history at Atlanta University. 1902, he's offered a teaching position at Tuskegee Institute by Booker T. Washington. This is very important because Booker T. Washington is one of his key interlocutors. They have philosophical differences about what Black America should do after slavery. We'll talk a bit about him. In fact, Du Bois dedicates a whole chapter to Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington has a famous speech in 1895 called the Atlanta Compromise, and it's a very interesting take on how blacks and whites should relate to each other. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the differences of opinion with Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, and he became a very successful man economically and politically. Okay, we'll talk later about that. 1905, Du Bois helps to found the Niagara Movement, a group of black leaders who work to promote the full civil and economic rights. Now, this meeting is really important because this meeting eventually leads to the formation of the NAACP. So in 1909, he joins the recently founded National Negro Committee, which eventually becomes the formation of the NAACP. 1915, Booker T. Watt. Now, I meant to say something again with respect to what date was that? So in 1902, he was offered a position at the Tuskegee Institute by his intellectual rival. He declines the offer. Okay, so that speaks to some of their rift there, right? What's interesting about that, and I'll talk about it later, is that Booker T. Washington believed that African Americans should focus on industrial education, trades. Du Bois believed in people receiving higher education, right? A liberal arts education, right? The irony is that when at Booker T. Washington's school, the Tuskegee Institute, he would hire African Americans who were educated at institutions of higher learning, right? So that's part of the irony. But they had different, and we have that debate today, right? What is the value of a liberal arts education versus practical, real-world skills? We're still debating that today, right? And they had that conflict. Let's continue here. So in 1915, Booker T. Washington dies. Du Bois has a publication called The Negro. And then what's interesting, he organizes a protest against D.W. Griffith's inflammatory film, Birth of a Nation. Any film students in here? Do they require that? Is Birth of a Nation required? Okay, it's one of the most racist films in American history, and it is also one of the most innovative films in American history. That's the tension in it being taught in film programs because it sort of creates a kind of film vocabulary, right? I won't get into detail with respect to that film, but you see Du Bois protesting that. And so already you see the kind of different waves of the American experience that Du Bois is a part of because he lived so long and because of when he was born, the kinds of things he's able to encounter here. 1919, he organizes the first Pan-African Congress in Paris. So the notion of Pan-African is the idea of kind of regrouping the persons who have been participating in the African diaspora. So African Americans aren't the only people of African descent, right? There are people who have lived in Africa. You have people in, say, Fiji, or people in the Bahamas, or people in South America, or even in places like Mexico, where you have folks who are of African descent but are Mexican, right? So you have people from all around the world who are persons of African descent, and this is this Pan-African concept. If you're familiar with the person of Marcus Garvey, he's a black leader in the early 20th century. His idea was to kind of organize African Americans or African peoples around this Pan-African concept. Can black persons kind of reclaim their sense of identity in the aftermath of slavery and colonialism and all these various kinds of things? he's very much involved in this Pan-African concept because in 1921, he organized another. He's the second Pan-African Congress held in London. In 1922, he advocates for the passage of the of an anti-lynching bill. In 1923, it's the third Pan-African Congress that is held in Lisbon. And then in 1927 is the fourth Pan-African Congress. So I'm just giving you a sense of kind of where his priorities are, how they evolve and how they shift. In 1933, he grows increasingly skeptical of the possibility of integration and begins to consider a stance on segregation. And so there's this disillusionment with the prospect of progress. Again, think about what he's seen. Think about what he's seen. Think about what he's experienced. He was not born a slave, but he knows people who lived in slavery. He has people he knows who are very close to that experience. And to go from here to here and to still ask himself is why because black people are free, technically speaking. Why is there disillusionment in 1933 regarding this matter, right? 1945, he attends a San Francisco conference to draft the United Nations Charter. Look at the scope of the kinds of things he's involved in. Again, born in 1868, helping to work on the Charter for the United Nations in 1945. In 1952, the U.S. Department of State denies Du Bois a passport when he refuses to sign an affidavit. 1954, he quotes the Supreme Court decision that ends legal segregation. He's shocked. And he's quoted here saying, I have seen the impossible happen. Think about that. This is a man who was almost born in slavery and lives to see the end of legal segregation. 1956, and I'm quoting, and the chronology I'm borrowing from our Oxford World Classics version of W.E.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk. In 1956, he sends a message of support to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Wow. What a life lived. I mean, wow. During the Montgomery bus boycott. So this is a young Reverend King just kind of getting his political kind of legs going. I mean, because his destiny was really to be a pastor and not really get so much into the politics. His father was a pastor, and he was supposed to take over his father's church. And this bus boycott is one of the things that begins to draw him out of a situation in which he's simply pastoring a church. And so Du Bois sees him at that moment. 1960, he travels to Ghana and Nigeria. 1963, he dies. I'm quoting from the text here. He dies in Accra on August 27th. Check this out. The eve of the Civil Rights March on Washington, D.C. Night before the March on Washington is when he dies. Woo! Amazing man. So that's just a sense of him, his accomplishments. I mean, we can have a whole lecture just on his biography, but I just wanted to give you those context here. But now I want to dig into this text here, The Souls of Black Folk, and we're just gonna give you an appetizer. We're gonna stick with the first 3 chapters, and within those 3 chapters, we're gonna deal with some basic concepts. And I might not even get to all of them because of how deep they are. So I want to start with chapter 1 here. He makes some amazing statements, and we'll do a little close reading here. I'm going to read some things, and I'm going to pause and talk about something here. This is a really interesting text because at the beginning of each chapter, he puts the lyrics to what he calls one of the sorrow songs, or the songs that slaves would compose and sing as a means for a number of things during slavery, as an outlet, as a release, as a way of communication, as some way to respond to the oppression. that was went outside the scope of what their masters were prescribing for them, right? And he's documenting some of these songs, and he actually put some of the musical notations there. But I love the opening of the first chapter, and we're gonna do a close reading of this. Between me and the other world, there is ever an unasked question. I'm going to say it again. Between me and the other world, there is ever an unasked question. It's a powerful statement, and I'm a sucker for openings. If anyone knows me, you know, Moby Dick, call me Ishmael. Oh, that's so powerful. We're not going to talk about Moby Dick today, but what an opening line, right? Different text, different context, different genre, but between me and the other world, there's ever an unasked question. So I kind of want to, as I looked at that concept, see, where do I want to go? I think I'm going to go here. You going to stay there for me? All right. So, between me and the other world. Remember the parable or the story Jesus told about the rich man and Lazarus? Remember that? And the rich man was, well, let's just say he didn't go to the good place. And here's the rich man with the flames burning him, and he's looking over at Abraham, and he's asking, he wants Abraham to dip his finger in some water and to cool his tongue, right? But Abraham can't do that. Why? There's a gulf between the two of them. It's a simple request. They're so close and yet so far. Okay, that's this. This is me, and then there's this other world here. And what is there? What's between us? There's an unasked question. That's such a fascinating idea, the unasked question, because it's sort of the inverse of Socratic, isn't it? It's the inverse of Socratic. It's the unasked question. But in its being unasked, it exists, and it's a barrier between me and the other world. I'm going to read another portion here, and this is so I'm going to read it again. Between me and the other world, there's ever an unasked question, unasked by some through feelings of delicacy. By others through the difficulty of rightly framing it. All, nevertheless, flutter around it. In contemporary vernacular, we call it the elephant in the room. They approach me in a half-hesitant sort of way. Eye me curiously or compassionately. Curiously or compassionately. And then instead of saying directly, how does it feel to be a problem? That's the question they want. They want to ask the question. But they don't ask that question. They're thinking that question, but they won't ask it. How do you broach this subject? And see, so, and they get into other things. They say, well, I know an excellent colored man in my town, or I thought at Mechanicsville, or do not these Southern outrages make your blood boil? In other words, they're trying to frame small talk around this deep, controversial issue. Now, I recognize the complexity of the race issue, and that it goes beyond a black-white dynamic. I understand that. But for the purposes of this text, I'm going to talk in terms of the author, which the author really focuses on this black-white dynamic. So I'm going to communicate in those terms, even though I understand that it's beyond that. And if your experience exceeds the black-white dynamic, you will find probably some parallels in this experience. Some of your experiences will be the same. Some of them will be different. But you'll find that there's some parallels with other experiences. But with respect to that, I'm gonna speak in these terms here. You ever wonder why it's so weird when black people and white people have casual interactions, there's a weirdness in the air. Oh, we're just going out to dinner, or we're just having class together, or it would just be the simplest thing, and it's this awkwardness. You don't know what to do with it. Du Bois is talking. He's telling you what it is. He's telling you what it is. It's just in the air. You don't know what to do. Why am I behaving this? Why all up until this moment I was just going about my day, going to the bank, studying my books, or driving in my car, and then I had this interaction with this other person who's a different race than me, and all of a sudden it's awkward. Awkward silences and pauses, and what is going on? So let's unpack this again. Here's me. Here's the other world. Why can't we just get along? Why? There's this unasked question. What's the unasked question? How does it feel to be a problem? Or for me, the contemporary question really is, what's it like to be black? Anybody ever take you out to lunch and ask you that question? They've taken me out to lunch and asked me that question. Not in so many words, but they kind of say, well, so tell me about yourself. Like, what do you like? How do you feel about stuff? What do you think about this? And sometimes they get me because sometimes I think they actually want to talk to me about something serious. Like, we're going to work on the problem. In other words, I actually think they're looking for my intelligence. But no, they're not. They're trying to understand, what is it like? Now, see, I'm not white, so I don't know what your experience is. But my guess is that doesn't happen to you as often. That people of color don't come up to you in some kind of way, say, what is it like to be white? What do you guys do when you go to church? What kind of songs do you sing? Like, when you go home, what kind of food do you eat? What kind of music do you like? I mean, what do you think is funny? What's your politics? Do you know why they don't ask the questions? They're not curious. You know why they're not curious? Because it's broadcast to everybody. What you prefer, what you think is funny, what you think is not funny. And so it is the black person, and you can extend this to people of color in general. He's focusing on the black-white dynamic. How does it feel to be a problem? Okay. And he's trying, see, I mean, so he's a Harvard grad, right? He's a thought man. He's a thought man, but he's trying to process this experience, right? So there's the thought, there's the intellectual side kind of dissecting, but he's experiencing this. So what happens when thought meets experience? And this is a question for you as Socratic thinkers and dialoguers. You've got to ask yourself this question, because you guys are excellent people at discussion. You're excellent people at critical thinking. But when that thought meets experience, what happens? How does the game change? And so what he's saying is, I'm an intellectual guy. I understand this, but I'm having this epiphany. Things I don't get from book knowledge, things that don't come because I read a book. He's saying I'm experiencing this. He says, and yet, in the next paragraph, he says, and yet being a problem is a strange experience. It's a strange experience. Peculiar, even for one who has never been anything else. In other words, yeah, I'm experiencing, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna read something else he said, and then I'm going to comment on an experience of mine that connects with this. So that is so I'm reading some classic lines from the text. Here's the next one here. I'm gonna slow down here. Oh, that's what I want to read here. So going back to the experience piece. So he goes from that to then talking about an experience in childhood, because it's usually childhood that teaches you that where you have this epiphany. You know, so that's like, for example, like, you know, if you're African American, right? You at some point, it usually happens. I'm sure this happens to almost every African American, right? You say, why do people call me black? Well, as a child, you learn your colors, and so there's brown, there's black, there's yellow. You kind of look at your skills like, I'm not black. Why do people call me black? You just can't, you can't reconcile that. I don't understand that. There's little epiphanies like, what? Why do we do this? And why do they say that? And why do these people have lunch together? And those people have lunch together. You know, kids, we do. You remember when you were a kid, you sort of like, why do people do? Okay, so he's in this next part of the chapter, he's talking about this moment where he has this epiphany. It's an epiphany. And I'm going to read it. He says, in a wee wooden schoolhouse, something put it into the boys and girls' heads to buy gorgeous visiting cards, 10 cents a package, in exchange. You know how you do? I know when I was little, we had little Valentine's cards, and we would come to class on Valentine's Day, and everybody exchanged Valentine's cards. That's what I'm imagining it's like, even though it's not talking about Valentine's Day. It's something like that. will you be my Valentine? You get Valentine's card, everybody in your class, you get a Valentine, you come away home with a bunch of Valentine's cards and some candy. That's what I'm thinking it's like. I don't know how you did it when you were younger. That's how I did it. The exchange was merry till one girl, a tall newcomer, refused my card. Refused it peremptorily with a glance. Woo! What was in that glance, boy? She didn't just refuse it. It was the glance. Now, everybody in this room is smart enough to know racial tension is all in the body language. Oh, body language. I mean, sometimes it's words, it's the body language. Everybody's reading it, and that's how you know it's awkward. Body language. I mean, she may have just turned her eyes down. I don't know what she did, but man, that glance said, it wasn't just the refusal, it was the glance. See, sometimes people don't refuse you, but they give you the glance. It's all right there. I mean, that tension is, woo, you can cut it with a knife. Why is it weird? Du Bois is unpacking it. This is why we have to study history. Because the present moment does not provide enough context to make sense of contemporary issues. It doesn't. It doesn't provide enough context. You're like, why do we keep talking about this? And why is this in the news? And why did we do this? Oh, have you looked at history? Oh, yeah. We've inherited something. We didn't just show up in the United States. Our forefathers and foremothers have left us with a nice little package. Is it fair we're born and just have to deal with it? No, but we're here. We have to wrestle with it. Think about this. Now, did you help found America? Did anyone here help found America? Anyone there? It was the founding fathers. He was there when the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, nobody was there. Okay. But who here doesn't want to claim the rights and privileges of being in the country? Anybody here? I mean, well, don't make no political statement. I'm just going to ask a rhetorical question here. Okay, but most people they're not going to deny they're not going to pass up that opportunity. I want my rights for whatever it is. I wasn't there, but I've inherited the right. Woo-wee. Everybody wants the right. Nobody wants the responsibility. If you inherit a business from your parents, you get the profits, but you also get the lawsuits and the debts. You didn't create the debt, you didn't create the lawsuit, but once the business is in your name, you're responsible. They're coming for you. We didn't found the country, but we're claiming rights. If you're going to claim the rights, you got to claim the debts. You got to claim the lawsuits. It's on you. Then they say, we the people. Yeah, see, folks in Congress, they're just the representatives. We're responsible. We're responsible. So we're responsible. You can't just claim the rights. People who just claim rights, they're not grown up yet. That's what kids do. Kids, I'm going to go get my own car. And I'm going to do this. Don't want to pay for the car. I might be talking to somebody here. I'm sorry if am I getting in your Kool-Aid? Yeah, I'm grown. I can do what I want, but you ain't paying for nothing. You ain't paying for insurance and all that kind of stuff. That's kids. When you grown, you're gonna have the car, but you're going to pay for the car. You're going to pay for the gas. You're going to pay for the insurance. Even if it means you got to eat top ramen. That's what you got to do. And as Americans, we just got to roll up our sleeves and say, okay, if we're going to claim the country, you got to claim responsibility. I want to say, and I digress, but I didn't digress. That was necessary. So let me finish here. See what's in a glance? It's all kind of stuff in a glance, isn't it? And I'm going to continue. He said, then it dawned upon me in a certain, after this glance and the refusal, it says, then it dawned upon me with a certain suddenness that I was different from the others. Everybody has the moment. They all have their moment, usually in childhood, or like mayhap in heart and life and longing, but shut out from their world by a vast veil. So close, but so far. So he talks about, because up until that point, every kid just thinks they're a kid. You know, you play with so-and-so, whoever, doesn't matter. And then there's some kind of incident that lets you know that's not your world. That's not your world. Yeah, you guys play together. Yeah, I know that. Go to school together. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know you know that. But that's not your world. That's not yours. Nobody says it outright. It's just an invisible set of rules. Don't belong to you. That was his epiphany. Some of you were there for the Story Slam, and some of you heard my story. I've shared it before. I'll share a little bit again here. When I was a senior in high school, I was at the post office, and I was just dropping off invitations to my graduation party, right? And the post office worker calls the police. I didn't know she called the police on me, though. I didn't know that part until I heard somebody shouting, and I was at the counter with my mail, and I heard it from my ear, and I said, "There's a disturbance. Woo, this police activity. Woo, is there a criminal in here?" And so I just turned to look to make sure it wasn't in anybody's way, and I turned, and the police officer was like this. It was just, put your hands up, right? So I spread them on the wall, and I didn't know what was going on, but I said, okay. And, they patted me down, and they put me in handcuffs, and they took me out of the post office, and I was directed to the police car outside, and I was sitting in the back handcuffed. I don't know what happened. I don't have any explanation, nothing. Okay, so just imagine you're going whatever, I don't know what you're doing, you're going to the store, whatever, and police officer just grabs you. You don't know why. Okay, what frame of mind were you? See, high school, how old is it? 17, 16, was that? Something like that? What is a 16 or 17-year-old boy supposed to think about that? I don't know police officer protocol. Why would I know that? I don't know. Nobody explained anything. I'm in the back of the police car. There's two police officers. One goes back into the post office. I assume to question what I found out later is the post office worker who called the police. They probably have some secret button or something. The other person's, I'm in the back. There, this guy's in the front, and he's questioning me, like, are you a gang? What set are you from? What gang are you from? I said, I'm not from a gang. I wasn't saying anything until he asked me the question. I'm looking at, he's angry. He's just like suspicious, and I'm like, and my mom like, why is this dude? Why does he think I did something? What, a gang member? What, do I look like I'm in a gang? And I just remember at that moment, he was looking at me, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking intently at me, and it was kind of in slow motion for a second, because I was like, this man doesn't see me. I don't know who he's looking at. He's not looking at me. But he's looking at somebody that made him angry. Who is that man? But he thinks that man is me. He's talking to me like he knows I'm guilty, like he knows I'm from a gang or whatever. And so he goes through that, and I just calmly answer his questions. And then he says, "You're too calm." You must be guilty. Like, now I didn't think about it then, but now I think about it. Was he trying to get me to say something or do something that would really get me in trouble? Is this police protocol? What are you supposed to do? So they go through all that. And then at some point, his partner comes back and says, it was a big mistake. The post office was robbed like 3 months earlier with 3 people in ski masks. So they saw you and called the police. None of that made sense to me, but hey, I was just happy to get out of there. But that was one of my epiphanies. Now that wasn't the first time I understood I was black, but here's what I understood. Here's what I got very clearly. Somebody's threatened by you, especially if you're black. They act first and ask questions later. If you are a threat, they act first and ask questions later. Now, I don't walk in fear because I don't walk in fear. I can't do that. My God's too big to walk in fear. But I'm also not a dummy. When I see the kind of force someone can respond to me just because they feel threatened. All bets are off. They can do whatever they want to do. If they're wrong, you just have to deal with it later. Epiphany. Those are the kind of, those situations help you understand the invisible set of rules out there. Now, here is where Du Bois says, whoo, man, this is classic. This is one of the passages you should, if you're going to memorize something, you memorize this one. He says it's a little mysterious, but I'll explain it. He says, after the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and Mongolian, he's using vernacular from the early 20th century here, okay? He says the Negro is a sort of seventh son. When he says seventh son, he's referencing mythology, the mythologies that talk about there's something special about the seventh son. There's traditions behind that, okay? So that's when he says that, that's what he's talking about. The Negro, this is the vernacular he's using, is sort of a seventh son, born with a veil. Now, when he says veil here, it's a play on words because in the African American community at this time, if you had a baby who was born with a caul, and the caul's like there's some kind of placental thing over the baby's face when it's born, the tradition in the African American community was that they assumed this child had some kind of prophetic insight. So he's playing on that African Americans are sort of born with this veil that on the one hand camouflages, hides, renders invisible, but provides the kind of insight. This is what he's talking about. Born with a veil and gifted, he says, with second sight in this American world. When he says American world, that's the other world. That's not his world. American world or white world. You see double. He says a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. So you understand yourself through the way that white people see you. That's how you see you. It's how white people see you. That's the doubleness. And you recognize this isn't really my world. This isn't really my neighborhood. This isn't really my school. This isn't really my church. This isn't mine. I know that. And so I have to abide by two sets of rules. One, to accommodate the way white people see me, and one to just figure out who I am. And they call it today code switching. Doesn't just apply to black people. Applies to other groups of folks. Code switching. In other words, I talk one way around white people. When I'm around black people, I speak differently. And when I mean that, I don't mean going from speaking the King's English to talking slang. I mean that there's just subjects you don't talk about, or jokes you don't talk about, or other kinds of things, because you don't want to disrupt your status in that other world. You got to protect it because there's cachet, there's cachet, and there's resources. You know, here's my theory about integration. I don't think black people fought for integration for the purity of the concept. I think they fought for integration because they wanted resources. The resources weren't equal. The law said separate but equal. The problem was it wasn't equal. And I think most black people at that time would have been fine segregated if they can get the same resources. Why go through the trouble? That's why white people don't often go the other way. Why don't we get, what's the motivation? There's three motivations, but they're not, there's three motivations that I see when white people go the other way. When white people want to go to the non-white world. One is charity. Two, entertainment. Three, exoticism. You know what exotic is? It means that I can live out an alter ego through you. I can be somebody else through you. So I'm around you not because I like you, because of who you helped me become by being with you, by singing your music, by dancing the way you dance, by wearing your colors on my face. It's an exotic experience. But there's not an economic reason to be there. Why are you going to a black bank? Why would you go into a black bank? If you're white, why would you do that? Most white people don't have a motive. There's white people who live in black communities, not many of them. Why? But black people and other people of color will come to white communities. Why? Resources. It's nice in Irvine. It's all organized, planned out. I mean, it is manicured, boy. Whoa, they built that. They built Irvine in a factory. Newport Beach look nice. The tradeoff, folks racist over there. You ever been to a restaurant? And you go to the restaurant and you sit down and you go eat, and in about 15 minutes, you've cleared the room. It happened to me and my wife. Orange County. I never notice it because I'm so hungry. So I'm just like, I'm enjoying my food. And my wife, Rossie's like, did you see the couple over? They left. What the? I mean, I never notice it. I promise you, because I'm so hungry. I want to eat my food. I'm here. I guess it's a long way to get to Orange County from here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm ready to go eat my food. She's like, now when I say they're racist over there, I don't mean every single person. But I'm saying if you're black, you see the racist ones. The racist ones stand out. It don't have to be everybody to feel like everybody racist. See, one white person mess it up for everybody. You don't have to personally be racist, but other white people mess it up for you. And my question is, When you see them doing trifling things, what you doing about it? They messing it up for you. We ain't all like that. Okay, when you see people do stuff like that, when they making jokes, when they doing dumb stuff, what are you saying in response? Hey, they affecting the whole white brand. And then folks get angry. You should do a social, I've been wanting to do this social experiment. I don't want to do it because I actually think it's dangerous. But I want to hire like 1,000 black actors and just drop them off in Newport Beach. Walk around. Just doing regular stuff. Oh, that would be funny. I mean, I really want to do it. But I think it's dangerous. I actually think that would be threatening to some people. And I don't know what they would do. Now, to be fair, everybody do something a little weird when somebody that's not like them shows up in their space. Everybody does that to some extent, right? I mean, I go to a predominantly black church. If 300 white people walked in there, we'd be looking at you. 2 or 3, whatever. But 300 of y'all, we'd be looking, we'd be wondering. I'd be like, well, welcome. I'm glad you're at church. How you doing? Like, why are you here? We'd be asking those questions. So some of that's human nature. Some of that's human nature. But because there's a power dynamic, white communities have resources in ways that other communities do not. But why is that the case? There's a history. See, I barely got into the book here. But my point is, okay, let me. So the beginning of the second chapter, he says, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. The problem of this is what he said, 1900, he says, this is prophetic. The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. But the issue is, for me, it's not just the color line, it is the money line. You ever heard of reparations? After the Civil War, black people were free, so to speak. What do? They created what they called the Freedmen's Bureau. It's the first large-scale welfare institution to help black people and poor whites to get adjusted in the aftermath of the Civil War. They help black people get legal marriages. They improve employee-employer relationships. It started black schools and all those other kinds of things. But one of the things that was not dealt with very well is the issue of land. Black folks were promised 40 acres and a mule. Spike Lee named his production company after that. 40 acres and a mule. Black folks never got it. So let me ask you something. What's the exponential economic effect of not having land? So think about your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents and my great-great-great-great-great-grandparents back in the 1860s. Your family has land, my family does not. What happens in terms of the disparity between wealth in those groups of people if you do not have land? How do you make that up? Times several decades. All these decades, all the way to 1963, when Martin Luther King is still saying, y'all have not cashed our check. Literally, he says it in his I Have a Dream speech. He says the word, we go in to cash a check, I'm paraphrasing, and it says insufficient funds. 1963. How hard do you have to work to make that up? So black folks who were never actually immigrants, they were slaves, but they were denied the benefits of a traditional immigrant experience, like Western European immigrant experience. When you come here and America's rough, they give everybody a hard time, but when they give you a hard time, you get your little group together and you start your own newspapers and your own stores and your own language stuff or whatever, and you create your own stuff, banks. You do all that stuff, and that's your response until you have the capital to do your own stuff. Black people were never afforded that opportunity. And not just economically, and I don't even have time. How much do I have? 10 minutes. Am I supposed to end at 8:40? I'll have to have time for questions, don't I? I can stop and take questions if you want me to. Got 15 minutes. I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so it's not just the economic part, it is the identity part. This is oh man, I don't have time. I'm gonna need, I need 4 or 5 more lectures here. So here's the thing. Here's part of the challenge with slavery, that the Bois is wrestling with, because slavery, what is slavery? What is it? What is it anyway? Is it chains and laws? There's a man named Orlando Patterson. He wrote a book called Slavery and Social Death. And he says that the power of slavery is really in the symbols, not the laws and the physical bondage. Because a lot of folks were slaves, not just black folks, all throughout human history. Slavery is not new. It's not unique to black folks. White people been slaves before. I'm telling you, it's not. It's happened to a lot of folks. What's unique about black folks is how powerful the symbolism is. That's what it is. Okay? Patterson says slavery is not this stuff over here. It's 3 things. First of all, it's social death. Most people became slaves historically by being captured in war. And if I capture you, I'll keep you alive, but if I keep you alive, you become my slave. And if you become my slave, that means you are no longer a person. Your identity is through me. Everything you are comes through me. Who you are is about me. In fact, I'm going to give you you don't have a name anymore. You got my name. You don't have a history anymore. You got my history. Right? So you are physically alive, but socially you have no existence. You're a non-person. The second thing is natal alienation. I kind of just mentioned it, but basically you cut ties with your history, your language, your identity, your country, everything. Black folks don't know where they came from. Where we know we came from? Africa. Which country? And the contemporary divisions of countries in Africa were not created by Africans. They were created by European colonists. So really, it's a tribal affiliation, and you don't know unless you take something ancestry.com, or they got AfricanAncestry.com these days too. You can take that test and you can find the tribe you're from. That's how you got to do it. And thirdly, it's a generalized condition of dishonor. There's no prospect of honor for you ever. You have to do this because otherwise my power as a master is not complete, because being master and slave requires some level of acting. I can't just do what you want me to do. I've got to act in a way that gives you honor. And here's the real problem people had with the end of slavery. Slavery provided clarity. And when you take slavery away, we don't have clarity. Clarity about what? What roles people play. You heard Plato, gold, silver, bronze. Everybody do their part. If the cobbler doesn't cobble and the guardian doesn't guardian and the farmer doesn't farm, how are we going to have a city? And if you're not a cobbler, then how can I be a guardian? Here's the phrase that comes out a lot. Black people got to stay in their place. You got to know your place. Why? Because if you're not in your place, I don't know where my place is. Especially if you're poor and white. If you're white and poor, I'm sorry. Right? Because a poor white person can still claim, I'm white. You have a degree? That's cool. You have a house? That's cool. But you know what? You're black. Whiteness cancels it out. And so, I'll probably end with this here. Because I was scribbling this down. Let me read it. This is just notes from some other time and place here. But I think this, you get a thought and you're just about to eat a donut or something. And then you just, let me write that down. Write that down here. So, okay. Slavery provided clarity for people. It put people in the proper place. It created a framework for social relations that helped white people make sense of their world, themselves, socially, economically, culturally, and spiritually. Slavery helped everything make sense. When you eliminate slavery, white people are disoriented. It raises the prospect of no longer having black people to be the repository for their fears and self-doubts and insecurities. Because that's what because this is recorded, I'll just say N-word. That's what an N-word is. It's the projection of what you fear most about yourself onto someone else. And that's what an N-word is. It's a mythological creature created by the fears and doubts of the people who created the term. They're afraid of themselves, so they personified it in a creature so they can say, that's the not me. At least I'm not black. Yeah, but at least I'm not black. They don't know what to do with a freestanding black person, a black person who talks back. That is the quote unquote Negro problem, as in the vernacular of Du Bois. What do you do with a black person who's free? Who just talks and just says what they think and does what they want to do. And if they want to go to the store, they go to the store. If they want to start a business, they start a business. If they want to start a family, they start a family. They just do regular stuff. I'll read one more thing here with respect to this. I got time. I got like 5-6 minutes, okay? I'm quoting from this, Dr. Thompson and I are working on something. He's editing something. I'm making a contribution. He's a historian. And I said, well, I'm a literary scholar. You sure you want me to contribute to this historical thing? He said, yeah. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just reading. This is just a draft here. But anyway, I'm going to just quote. I think you'll get it here. It says, I'm reading this. The crisis became particularly pointed as Anglo-Americans came to terms with the double-edged sword of the democratic principle they heralded. Democratic equality raised for whites the prospect of a demotion as much as it did a promotion. In other words, democratic equality is threatening. Think about it. When somebody moves into your neighborhood, whoever it is, you excited? No folks moving to your school, you excited? Oh, they get to have what we have now. That's going to be great. Who is excited about that? First thing is, who are they? What are they about? Are they taking my stuff? Are they going to have room for me? Equality's cool when you don't have it. But if you got the status already, you're not excited about somebody else having the status. If everybody a VIP, nobody's a VIP. Speaking of that's what I think I mentioned that here in the Incredible. So no, I don't have to quote all this. I think I got the concept here. That's the idea. Free black people means they coming for stuff I have. They get the same rights I have, which means we're interchangeable. That means that person could have my job because they're the same as me. So more competition. Human nature, folks. That's not a white thing. That's just a human nature thing. We're threatened by more people having access. We want to be special. We want to be the VIP. We want the award. If everybody gets the award, we're going to be as mad as Dash and Mr. Incredible. So anyway, that's the appetizer for today. I hope you read the book. Oh, man, that's a huge question. You have to ask me a more specific question. What are you thinking about it, and how do you want me to respond to it?
What do you think W.E.B. Du Bois would have?
Oh, man, I think he'd be even more cynical than he was already becoming in 1960. He moved to Ghana. He couldn't take it. He couldn't take it. Think about how long he's been working on this. To see the end of slavery and then see things not change the way they're supposed to. He's thinking I don't think it'll ever change. It's the same issue today, right? You have, you can cite examples of black progress, like you can cite Booker T. Washington, but during the time of Booker T. Washington, there was also lynching going on at the same time, right? So you can cite examples of black prosperity, but you can also cite examples of black folks being killed and trying to explain why that's the case. And people are trying to understand that. Why is that the case? Why don't you have stories like that for white people? Unarmed white people being killed by black police people. You don't, there's a lot of explanations for that, but that is the thing. Now let me say something briefly about that, because I don't think most police officers are doing crazy things. I certainly don't have many interactions with law enforcement, and when I do, it's usually a non-story, to be honest with you. I don't think everybody, I don't even think it's a police officer issue by itself. I think with police officers, the thing with police officers is it's heightened stakes. They are militarized and have the authority of the state. Every place they go is a heightened situation. Now you couple that with a history of racial tension. Woo! But it's not just police officers, it's security guards, it's random citizens with vigilante justice, stand your ground laws. So to that extent, it's kind of unfair to some extent to just focus on police officers, because it's broader than that. I don't think police officers are more or less racist than the general population. I really don't. I just think it's a high stakes situation. And if you look at the history between law enforcement and the black community, there's always been tension. Since the colonial America, there's always been tension. So that's a little bit, because you asked a broad question, so I just gave you an answer that was conveniently had. So, yes, ma'am. Oh, they could both do the same thing, grow. Gotta grow. The problems that we face, this is Einstein, can't be solved at the same level of thinking you had when they were created. We all have to grow. They're bigger than our current level of maturity. So everybody just has to mature and grow up. We can solve the problems better. And Scripture just calls that love. Love makes you mature. Yes, sir. I didn't. I kind of started on it. Yeah, so double consciousness is just, I didn't even finish reading the quote. Let me at least give you the courtesy of reading the second half of the quote. It says, after the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton, the Mongolian, the Negro is sort of a seventh son born with a veil and gifted with a second sight in this American world. A world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness. This sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. Whatever fills his two-ness, it's the two-ness, always the two-ness. You walk in, you just two-ness. An American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals, and one dark body whose dog strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. It's that two-ness. And black people get a bad rap because they say, you're not patriot, how come you don't like America? Double consciousness. We like America, but you need to read Frederick Douglass' speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. That'll tell you what double consciousness is. What to the slave is the 4th of July. Yes, ma'am. I mean, if you're African American, what's the draw? What's the draw? Gotta ask some African Americans. They can tell you, but that's the basic question. That's for anything. How come I don't see more of whoever? You just have to ask whatever group I want to have more of, what is the draw for that group? Oh, I wouldn't even know how to answer that. I mean, I think we're all rich and complex. I think we all are, and I think, most demographic categories camouflage that complexity. That's what I'm saying. I think everybody is, white people included. So that's what I think. It's hard to see with the categories we put people in.
Yeah, I guess just how significant are those? Because there's lots of other factors.
Well, I think white people need to unpack whiteness. It's fairly complex. And that if you unpack how complex your experience is, it will give you insight into how complex somebody else's experience is. I think, and I can't speak for every white person. I'm not saying every white person thinks, but I think most white people don't think their experience is complex. They just think I'm just a person, I'm just an American, I'm just clear, I'm just nothing. Everybody else has a culture, I don't. Oh, no, that's not true. Okay, Ms. Tom. That's a good question. I think before to ask the question, I think we shouldn't talk. I think we should marinate. I think it's too much talking. I think, this is just my thing, okay? I think most white people should go embed themselves in non-white experiences. Don't say anything, just be there. For like a year, 2 years, 3 years, watch all the body language. You'll learn if you go join a black church and be there for like 3, you will learn way more about black people than you would taking them out to lunch. You just there's no conversation you're gonna have that's gonna teach you more than just sitting there. Woo, you learn a lot. Yes, ma'am. You just go, and that stuff may show up, but so what? You just stick it out. You do with all the awkwardness, you stick it out. And you figure it out, and I'm determined to ingratiate myself to this community, and I don't care how much they giving me, because you're going to get strange looks, and people going to stare you up down, give you the once over, and probably say some racist things to you. But you got to still stick it out, because you determined, I'm going to make this work. Yes, ma'am.
We talked about the Bois.
I don't know. I don't know if I've lived long enough to see that. I could just focus on my own evolution. I just have to grow. I just try to grow every day. That's what I try to do, and try to learn and try to be better. That's really all anybody can do with the help of Christ. Got to have Christ. You can't, we need grace. This stuff takes faith. When you see how crazy people are and how angry people are, how the church going to come together? Well, you better have some faith, because you're not going to see it in the natural. And you better trust God, but we make ourselves a committee of one, and we decide, I'm going to grow personally. What does Joshua D. Smith need to do right now to be more like Christ? That's what Joshua D. Smith needs to do. And that's my contribution. And you do the same for you, and we'll be better.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.